It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13.
Yeah, that really sets the mood immediately, doesn't it?
It totally does. You are walking into this hallway, and it smells of boiled cabbage and old rag mats. There's this gritty dust just swirling around your ankles, and on every single wall, there's a poster of this enormous face, like more than a meter wide.
With eyes that just seem to follow you wherever you move.
Exactly. Welcome to our deep dive for today. I'm your host, and sitting across from me is our resident expert on all things dystopian. Today, we are stepping right into the terrifying world of George Orwell's 1984.
Thanks for having me. And yes, it is a setting designed to make you feel small from the very first sentence. We have a massive stack of excerpts and notes here, and our mission today is to really look under the hood of this society. We aren't just retelling the plot. We want to unpack the mechanism of how this totalitarian state actually functions.
Right, how it controls reality itself, and, the small, desperate attempts at rebellion within it. Because it really is a visceral world. We aren't just talking about abstract political systems, we are talking about a lived nightmare.
A completely immersive nightmare. You mentioned the posters. The Big Brother is watching you posters everywhere.
Yeah.
But the core instrument of that control is the telescreen.
Yeah, that really stood out in the readings, because it is not just a TV.
No, it receives and transmits simultaneously, which is the absolute key to Orwell's surveillance state. You can dim the screen, sure, but you can never actually turn it off.
Meaning you just have to live, and I guess eventually you just live entirely by instinct with the assumption that every single sound you make is overheard.
Overheard and scrutinized. Except in total darkness, every movement is watched. There is zero privacy, and silence itself isn't even an option.
That concept of living by instinct is just terrifying. You self-censor your own facial expressions without even thinking about it. And our guide through this decaying world is Winston Smith, who isn't exactly a typical action hero.
Far from it. Winston is 39 years old. He's frail. He has fair hair. But his skin is completely roughened by coarse soap and blunt razor blades.
And the ulcer.
Right, the varicose ulcer above his right ankle that is just constantly itching or hurting. It is a physical manifestation of how damaged he is by the world he lives in. He's a low-level party member, basically just a bureaucrat.
Which makes him the perfect lens for us. He sees the actual machinery of the state from the inside. He works for the party, specifically inside this massive, glittering, white concrete pyramid called the Ministry of Truth.
Mintru in their language.
Yeah. And etched onto the face of this building are the three slogans of the party. And I have to say, reading them one after another, they are incredibly jarring. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength.
They are jarring because they are complete paradoxes. But in this society, those are the foundational truths. And this is where we really have to look at the architecture of the state. The names of the government buildings, the ministries, are just as contradictory as the slogans.
Let's break those down.
Sure. You have the Ministry of Truth, which concerns itself with news, entertainment, and education, which really means it concerns itself with lies and propaganda.
Then there is the Ministry of Peace, dealing with war.
The Ministry of Plenty, which is responsible for economic affairs. But in practice, that means managing rationing and starvation.
And then there's the last one, the one Winston has never even set foot in.
The Ministry of Love, Middle-Louvre.
Easily the most terrifying one.
Oh, absolutely. It has no windows at all. It is surrounded by barbed wire entanglements, steel doors, hidden machine gun nests. It is supposed to maintain law and order, but it is literally the place of torture.
Okay, let's unpack this contradiction for a second. Why name the torture building the Ministry of Love? It feels like they are just openly mocking the population. It seems counterintuitive to be so blatant.
I get why it feels like mockery, but it is actually much deeper than that. It is a deliberate, systematic exercise in what they call doublethink.
Doublethink.
Yes. This is a crucial concept to grasp. It might be the most important concept in the entire book. Doublethink is the power of holding two completely contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously, and accepting both of them is true.
So it's not just lying to other people?
No. It is the ability to consciously induce unconsciousness. You learn to forget the truth, believe the lie, and then genuinely forget that you ever changed your mind in the first place.
Okay, so if the party says war is peace, you don't just nod along to avoid getting thrown in a cell. You have to force your own brain to genuinely believe that war is peace.
Exactly, because if you only pretend, you are eventually going to be guilty of face crime.
Face crime. Just wearing an improper expression.
Right. A micro expression of doubt will get you killed. So to survive, you must fracture your own logic. It is this intense mental gymnastics routine that keeps you totally subservient.
And we actually see this doublethink in action with Winston's job, because his daily work is fascinatingly mundane, but also horrific. He works in the records department, and his literal job is to rectify the past.
Rectify being a very polite word for rewrite. Winston gets these little slips of paper with instructions. Let's say Big Brother made a speech last week predicting that the front lines in the war would remain quiet in South India, but an offensive would launch in North Africa.
But then reality happens.
Right. In reality, the offensive actually happens in South India. So Winston's job is to pull up that old speech and rewrite it so that Big Brother predicted exactly what actually happened.
Meaning Big Brother is never, ever wrong.
Never. If the facts change, the historical record changes to match.
There was that specific example about the chocolate ration that just stuck with me. It is so petty, but it perfectly illustrates what they are doing. The Ministry of Plenty issued a promise that there would be no reduction of the chocolate ration during the year. But then they reduced it from 30 grams to 20 grams.
So Winston has to hunt down the original published promise and rewrite it. He might change it so the ministry only warned that a reduction might be necessary. Or, perhaps more chillingly, he rewrites it so the ration was originally lower.
Making the new 20-gram ration look like an increase.
Precisely.
That is just insidious. You aren't just taking away the chocolate, you are taking away the right to be angry about it. Can't be mad about a cut if the historical record shows you just got a raise. But wait, Winston remembers the truth, right? He knows he just rewrote it.
He remembers, but he has to use doublethink to forget that he remembers. And once he makes his correction, the original factual scrap of paper goes straight into the memory hole.
That slit in the wall.
Yes. It leads to a massive furnace. The evidence literally becomes ash. The past isn't fixed in this society. It's a palimpsest, scraped clean and reinscribed as often as necessary. The party slogan completely sums it up. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past.
But it's not just documents they are erasing, it's people. Winston talks about vaporization.
The creation of the unperson. If you offend the party, you aren't just arrested and executed. You simply disappear, usually in the middle of the night. Your name is removed from all the registers.
Every record of everything you have ever done is just wiped out.
You didn't just die. You never existed at all. Winston even has to invent a fake person once. A Comrade Ogilvy.
Right, to replace a disgraced official in the records. He just creates a dead war hero from scratch. Gives him a whole backstory of devotion to the party. And now, this completely fabricated Comrade Ogilvy exists in the archives just as authentically as Julius Caesar. Terrifyingly efficient. But they aren't stopping at history. They're trying to control the very way people think through language itself. We really need to talk about Newspeak, because this isn't just a dialect or slang.
No, it is aggressive linguistic engineering. Winston has this incredibly chilling conversation in the canteen with a guy named Syme. Syme is a philologist working on the 11th edition of the Newspeak dictionary.
And Syme is just so enthusiastic about it?
He loves his work. He explains that the entire goal of Newspeak isn't to invent new words. The goal is to destroy them.
He calls it cutting the language down to the bone.
Exactly. The idea is to narrow the range of thought. If you eliminate the words required to express rebellious thoughts, then thought crime becomes literally impossible.
Because there are no words to form the thought.
Right. Why do you need the word bad when you could just use ungood? Or if you want to say something is excellent, you don't need splendid or superb. You just use plus good or double plus good.
It sounds efficient on the surface, but it is essentially lobotomizing the population. If I can't articulate that I'm being oppressed because the words tyranny and oppression simply do not exist in the dictionary anymore, I can't even form the rebellion in my own mind.
That is the stated goal. Syme actually says to Winston, orthodoxy means not thinking, not needing to think. Orthodoxy is unconsciousness.
The ultimate form of control.
Yes. If you don't have the word for freedom, you can't yearn for it. And the dark irony here is that Winston looks at Syme, this guy who is too intelligent, who sees too clearly how the mechanism works, and Winston thinks one day he will be vaporized.
Because the party doesn't even want people who understand the mechanism, even if they agree with it.
They just want blind, unconscious obedience.
So you have the workplace rewriting history, the language actively shrinking your brain, but then you go home and the horror just continues. Winston's neighbors, the Parsons, this felt like a totally different flavor of horror. Not cold bureaucracy, but pure domestic terror.
The Parsons family represents the party's ultimate success in destroying private life. You have the father, Tom Parsons. He is this sweaty, enthusiastic, unquestioning drudge. He loves the hiking, the banners, the volunteering.
But the mother is a wreck.
Mrs. Parsons is a completely terrified woman with dust in the creases of her face. And what is she terrified of? She's terrified of her own children.
Because the children are little monsters. They are dressed in the uniform of the spies. They run around the apartment shouting traitor and thought criminal at Winston.
It looks like a game, but it is deadly serious. The kids are actively disappointed because they couldn't go see a public hanging of Eurasian prisoners. The party has successfully severed the bond between parent and child.
The text explicitly says that people over 30 are frightened of their own kids.
Because the children are trained to listen to keyholes. They are encouraged to denounce their own parents to the thought police for any minor slip of the tongue. The family unit itself has been weaponized by the state. And all of this pent-up rage and paranoia is channeled into this daily ritual, the 2 minutes hate.
Which is a brilliant psychological mechanism to drain off any potential rebellion against the party. Every single day, party members gather in front of the telescreen and scream at an image of Emmanuel Goldstein.
The primal traitor. The great enemy of the state.
Yes.
The description of this event is just intense. Winston notes that it is impossible to avoid joining in. You just get swept up in this hideous ecstasy of fear and vindictiveness. People are throwing things at the screen. You want to kill, to torture, to smash faces in with a sledgehammer. It sounds like a demonic mosh pit.
But notice Winston's internal observation during it. This rage is completely abstract and undirected. It can be switched like a spotlight. 1 second, he hates Goldstein. The next second, his hatred involuntarily switches to the dark-haired girl sitting behind him just because she is young and pretty. And then suddenly, he is worshiping Big Brother as a savior.
It is emotional manipulation on an industrial scale. Keep the population in a constant state of shifting hysteria so they never have a quiet moment to actually think.
Let's pivot to the rebellion. Because despite all this intense brainwashing, Winston does try to fight back. And it starts surprisingly small. He goes to a junk shop in a prole neighborhood. The proles being the working class, the massive majority of the population that the party mostly ignores.
He goes there and buys a blank book, which is an archaic, almost forgotten object, and he begins a diary.
Sitting in a little alcove in his apartment just out of sight of the telescreen.
This is his first truly decisive act. In a world of digital surveillance and constantly altered records, writing permanently on physical paper is a radical act of privacy.
He writes down with Big Brother over and over again, and he's terrified while he's doing it. He knows this is thought crime, and thought crime does not entail death. Thought crime is death.
But he can't stop. He has this deep obsession with the past. He wanders the prole sector, going into dirty pubs, trying to talk to old men. He's desperate for a reference point. He just wants someone to tell him if life was actually better before the revolution.
The party claims life used to be miserable. Capitalists in top hats enslaving everyone. Winston just wants to know if that's the truth.
But when he finally corners an old man in a pub, it's a complete dead end. The man only remembers entirely useless, disconnected details.
The lack of top hats, the price of a pint of beer.
Exactly. It proves to Winston that the true history is effectively gone. There is no one left with the perspective to judge the present against the past.
Which is tragic. You have history sitting right in front of you, but it's completely incoherent.
Without a point of comparison, you can't officially say the present is bad. You can only say that it is. The erasure of any alternative reality is the scariest part.
But he does find one tangible piece of the past in that junk shop, the coral paperweight.
Ah, yes. Mr. Charrington's junk shop. It's a piece of coral embedded in a hemisphere of glass. Winston buys it not because it's useful, but specifically because it is useless.
Useless and beautiful.
Right. It's a little pocket of history that hasn't been rectified by the party. It symbolizes the world he desperately wants to live in, a world where things can just exist for their own sake.
And then the rebellion takes a massive, sharp turn. Enter the girl with the dark hair, Julia.
This completely shifts the narrative. Winston has spent the entire first part of the story terrified of her. He genuinely believes she is a spy, an agent of the thought police monitoring him.
He even has violent fantasies of killing her just to protect himself.
Which perfectly illustrates how the party destroys human connection. Your first instinct toward a stranger isn't curiosity or community. It is to kill them before they kill you.
But then she falls down in the corridor at work. He instinctively helps her up, and she slips a tiny scrap of paper into his hand.
He waits hours to open it, terrified it's a summons or a death warrant.
And when he finally unfolds it, it just says, "I love you."
That note changes everything for him. It's like a jolt of electricity. Suddenly, Winston genuinely wants to live. It wasn't an intellectual argument about history that woke him up. It was human connection.
They start this incredibly complex, paranoid dance just to speak to each other, arranging to sit at the same table in a crowded canteen, avoiding the telescreens. They finally manage to meet out in the countryside.
In a clearing that Winston actually recognizes as the golden country from his dreams.
And when they finally get there, safely away from the hidden microphones, Julia rips off her scarlet sash, the emblem of the Junior Anti-Sex League.
That gesture is so crucial. Winston admires it because it is an act of total annihilation. She is physically throwing away the identity the party imposed on her.
And when she tells him that she has done this scores of times with other party members, Winston is absolutely thrilled.
He says he hates purity, he hates goodness, he wants everyone to be corrupt to the bones.
Because virtue is just another tool of the party.
Exactly. Their intimacy isn't just romance. It is explicitly described as a political act. The party tries to kill the sex instinct, or distort it into hysteria to fuel war fever and leader worship. They need that repressed energy for the 2 minutes hate.
So by enjoying each other, by having a private loyalty, they are striking a direct blow against the regime.
But we should note that Julia is very different from Winston.
Oh, completely. She doesn't care about the past. She doesn't care if the chocolate ration is a lie.
She is a highly practical rebel. She understands the party's mechanics better than Winston in many ways. She knows exactly how to dodge the rules. She yells the loudest during the hate. She carries the banners, all as camouflage so she can live her own secret life.
Winston rebels from the head. Julia rebels from the waist downwards.
Perfectly said.
They eventually take this massive risk. They rent the dusty room above Mr. Charrington's junk shop, the very same place Winston bought the diary and the paperweight.
It becomes their absolute sanctuary, a place with no telescreen, or so they believe. They start creating a tiny domestic life. Julia brings in all these inter-party luxuries she stole. Real coffee, sugar, real white bread, makeup.
She paints her face, she wears a dress. They just lie in a double bed listening to a prole woman singing in the courtyard outside. It sounds so wonderfully normal.
But in this context, normalcy is incredibly fragile. They both know they are doomed. Winston keeps repeating, "We are the dead."
The fear is just a constant hum in the background. They talk about rats, which are Winston's greatest phobia, infesting the old buildings. They know intellectually the thought police will eventually kick the door in.
They're trying to carve out a tiny private universe inside a totalitarian cosmos. It can't last.
And hanging over all of this is O'Brien, this powerful inner party member. Winston feels this intense, strange link to him.
It's based on almost nothing. A shared glance during the 2 minutes hate. But it makes Winston believe O'Brien is secretly an enemy of the party too. Winston even dreams of O'Brien saying to him, "We shall meet in a place where there is no darkness."
They actually have a brief conversation